In freshman year of high school, I had a problem of feeling like I was fitting in. Despite attending a summer class where I met a few new people and was exposed to a larger amount of people, and knowing some people who went to this public high school from when I went to public elementary school and from meeting people in the nearby area when I was younger, I still felt like I did not belong. Moving back from private middle school to public high school made it hard to feel like I knew people, feel like I fit in, because a lot of the other people seemed like they knew people more intimately, or that they were just more charismatic or whatever. Now I know that this was not in fact true. Most everyone was kind of just flying by the seat of their pants in the same way I was. But at the time, I didn't know that. And it felt like everyone was so much cooler, so much more prepared, so much more knowledgeable about everything that was going on than I was. And so I felt lonely. And this was despite, again, having access to a large group chat with a lot of different people, and even technically speaking, having access to a friend group of a smaller set of those individuals, because I just didn't feel like I belonged with them. I just felt like they didn't want me, or that I didn't have any traits that I could really bring to the table. So what would be the point? Like, why would they hang out with me? Why would I hang out with them? We'd just like both be wasting our time because, they clearly wouldn't like me. And this kept going for a couple of months at the start of the first semester of freshman year, where I slowly perpetuated myself into more and more loneliness, because I would figure, hey, people don't really want to talk to me, and so I won't talk to them. And even when people would essentially go out of their way to talk to me, I would just kind of ignore it. I would just pretend or see it as them just pitying me or not really wanting to be friends with me and just having to talk to me. An example of this was in freshman year. For lunch, I would sit by myself. There were a set of stairs that would lead to a theater, and these stairs were pretty big. It was kind of amphitheater style stairs. So there would be other people there sitting there by themselves, but I chose to sit there, and for a while I would sit there by myself. I would just get my food, go sit there and eat. And some people I would know would walk by sometimes, and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?" And I'd be like, "I'm eating." And they'd be like, "Okay, I guess you do you. Feel free to continue eating." But and that kind of reinforced my idea that, hey, people just want to be acquaintances. They don't really want to be friends. And so I continued to do that until some people would actually sit with me. They would go out of their way to sit with me at lunch. There were a couple of people who did this. One was my future girlfriend, but she didn't actually sit with me that often because she was followed by another guy, and she had other friends, so she would go sit with them more often. And then eventually it was another girl and another guy who were like, "Oh, I'll sit with you sometimes," and whatever. And but for one, they wouldn't always be there. Sometimes they would be busy, sometimes they wouldn't like be there, sometimes they'd have other friends, whatever. So it switched around. And then sometimes I would still have fun. I'd be like, oh, we're talking, whatever. And I probably felt closer to them. But outside of that, we didn't really share many classes. There wasn't really any extracurriculars that I shared with them. And so I don't think I talked to them very much outside of that. And so, despite this exposure and this having this experience of talking to people and people going out of their way to talk to me, in my mind, I was still like, oh man, I'm just a loser. No one really wants to talk to me. And I still felt lonely. So, yeah, past a couple of months, we get to deep into October. So, a bit of August, all of September, and then some October happened. So, about 2 months of school has gone by now. And I'm feeling lonely. And it seems like because I have spent this time kind of moping around and not going out and talking to people and getting into these friend groups, that I am at an even further slope when it comes to actually talking to people, because they all seem to know each other more and more. They all seem to have inside jokes. They all seem to be very happy with each other. And I don't necessarily see that same reciprocity when they're talking to me, which is part delusion, probably, and also part because I simply was behind in that sphere of talking to people, because I had spent that time just not associating as much, not going out of my way to make friends. They were just more comfortable with the people that they had talked to. It's not any fault of theirs. It's all on me. And so the new people that I had met, a lot of the new people that I had met that I didn't know before at high school, were people that I didn't really feel like I didn't really want to talk to as much, because I thought that, wow, they don't have any familiarity with me, they don't have any history with me, they're clearly getting along better with other people, so they probably just don't want to talk to me. So I talked, or tried to talk to, more of the people that I knew before. For instance, the people that sat with lunch with me, 2/3 of them were people that I had known before high school, either through Chinese school on Sundays or from elementary school. But that ended up being kind of bad for me, because these people too also were able to make friends faster than me. They went out and talked to people, or had previous connections from middle school that I did not have, and so they would spend time with other people. But nevertheless, the people I talked to the most were those people. One person that I knew the most, or felt like I knew the most, because I had spent a lot of time with them more in elementary school and a little bit in Chinese school and middle school, so I felt like I knew them a little more, was, I'll call him B, someone that I tried to reach out to, tried to talk to, tried to associate with. And my dad saw something, or I saw something, and I went to my dad. But regardless, it was a trip to Six Flags. Six Flags is an amusement park that was close to where I lived, and it was supposed to be, I think, like a free field trip after school to Six Flags. It was paid for by like a club or something. I don't really know what club was paying for a free trip to an amusement park. because they also didn't shill the club or anything. They just had us show up and go to the amusement park. But I digress. I saw this thing and I was like, oh man, I haven't actually been to Six Flags before this point. Or if I had, it had been a long, long time ago, and so I didn't really remember. So I was like, oh, this would be pretty cool. I like amusement parks. I like the idea of amusement parks. It would be nice to go. But this event was something where there were other people who were going that I didn't know, and so I was like, oh man, I would feel so awkward just going by myself to this thing because I don't know anyone else. And in amusement parks, a big thing that you kind of need is someone to go with. It's pretty sad to go to an amusement park by yourself, at least to me. Yeah, I like just even having the company, not even necessarily being super talkative or whatever with the person, is just like an important aspect of the experience for me. And so I felt kind of uncomfortable with the idea, but my dad suggested, or kind of pushed me to go and ask someone. And the person I settled on was B. And I was kind of like locked in on them as the candidate for going to the Six Flags outing. I don't really know why, besides the fact that maybe I just felt the most comfortable with them as a person or whatnot. But I decided to ask them. I waited a long time. So I think the posting was made 2 weeks in advance or something like that. And I was told to ask someone, and I settled on the someone in question around when I was made aware of it. And then I took until like 3 days before the actual event was supposed to happen to ask someone. I was like gathering up the courage and hoping that I wouldn't be rejected. And I took that time and I asked B, hey man, you want to go to this thing? And because it was so late, like it was right before the weekend and right before when we were supposed to do it, like Friday, he was like, oh yeah man, I can try, it sounds pretty cool, but I'm not actually sure if I'll be able to go. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's cool, that's chill, just like let me know. And the next day he's like, yeah man, I've got something, I don't think I'll be able to make it. But I had been so excited that he had even given me like a more lukewarm yes. He might have been more confident about his availability. Regardless, I was so ecstatic that he had accepted my invitation that I had told my dad, and then my dad like signed me up or whatever. And so when B told me, it's like, hey, I can't actually make it, I was like, shoot. What am I supposed to do now? I felt a big character flaw of mine is that I really hate going back on something that I've said that I'll do. So in this case, talking to my dad and telling him, oh yeah, the friend signed up and I'm like ready to go, and then having to go and say, actually he said he's not and whatever, because I had told my dad also 2 weeks before that I would ask him, and then I had that he confirmed it on like Wednesday before, and so I felt really stupid if I had told him, hey, yeah, actually I'm not gonna go because he said he can't go. So I was like, okay, I'm going to lie to my dad. I'm going to tell him that B is still going and that I want to go to this thing. Or at least not tell him that I don't want to go. Looking back, it would be pretty easy to say, oh, he couldn't make it or he had to cancel, and so I'm not going to go. But regardless, this is what occurred. And so I go to this outing to Six Flags by myself, despite knowing that I really needed another person to go with me. And so after school on this Friday, we get on a bus, and it's a school bus, so like seats are like two people sit in each seat, and almost everyone on the bus who is there has someone that they know. If not everyone, like people are talking in little groups and chatting about how exciting it's gonna be and whatever. I do not talk to any of them on the bus, and I, feel more and more stupid because all these people clearly were not idiots like me, figured out how to ask someone, had people to ask, and actually managed to ask someone, and then went out and actually went to the thing with their friends. So I felt like a big stupid head. But I was like, okay, you know what? I haven't been Six Flags. I've heard from in middle school and whatever that this Six Flags place is pretty exciting. So the silver lining is, at the very least, I will still be able to go on the rides and, at least in theory, enjoy it. I step off the bus, and I already feel a little chilly. The late October weather was pretty cold. I think it was probably either like a 40 to 45 degree type of day. But I had been under the impression that it wasn't going to be that cold. That would be completely fine. And so I had brought a pretty light puffer jacket, and my dad had told me beforehand, hey man, it looks like it's gonna be pretty cold. Are you sure that's what you want to bring? That's what you want to wear? And I told him, yeah, it's fine. I think also because I thought that wearing a thicker outerwear, wearing a thicker coat, whatever, would make me look dumb or make me look lame. And so I was like, yeah, no, I'm fine in this light puffer. I very soon found out that I was very much not fine. It started off, I was already cold. It was windy. I was cold. I was lonely. Not a great combination. But then, as the night progressed, because we went after school, it got darker. It got colder, and I got more miserable. At first, I went on, I think, 1 or 2 rides that were outdoors, but eventually it got so cold that I was like, holy fuck, I will be very, very sad if I continue to stay out here. So I sought out indoor rides. Six Flags has a couple of indoor rides, and they're inside the indoor rides, the line that you wait in is like heated. So I would, after going on like 2 rides, I essentially just waited in these long ass indoor ride lines to just warm up, to stay warm. And again, after I did these rides were fun. Obviously, it's like, it's an amusement park, whatever. But after I would go on this ride, I would be like, okay, I can't go on it again, because I self-imposed a rule, essentially, that was like, oh yeah, you can't go on this ride that often. You'll look like a dummy. And I don't really know who would be observing this. It's not as if anyone from school would be observing me. They were off doing their own thing, and even if they did, they probably wouldn't be going on the ride again. It's not as if the employees there would be observing it. It's not as if they care, because there are a ton of people going through the ride, and one kid who goes on one ride again, maybe because he's cold, maybe because he just enjoys the ride, they're not gonna care, right? They might not even notice. But I still was like, no, I can't. I at the very least cannot ride the same ride twice in a row. So after I would ride one of the indoor rides, I would just walk around outside. I'd be like, yeah, no, I can do this. I can walk around outside. It's not that cold. And then I would immediately just be really cold and feel really bad, and I'd be like, oh fuck. And so I would like revolve between going into some of those rides, the indoor rides, and then going to shops or like small restaurants, because they had those. It's an amusement park, and they had like an Italian, but I didn't have much money. I was given $10. My dad was like, here's $10, used to buy food, buy whatever. And I was like, yeah, which is probably a pretty reasonable amount for just like having dinner at an amusement park. But I, for the same reason that I was too scared or didn't want to actually go on a ride more than 2 times in a row, I didn't really want to stay in one of these restaurants or stores for too long, because I was like, oh, if I'm not actually doing the thing that the store or restaurant is meant for, then I shouldn't stay there, because why would that make sense? Which is, again, nonsensical, but in my cold, addled young mind, I was like, no, I can't be at this establishment unless it has like a purpose. I can't go out of my way. I can't be selfish about it or whatever. And so I think at one of the restaurants, I got one thing which was overpriced, and so I ran out of most of the money. And I think it was, no, I think about it was probably $20 instead of 10. But I got like some food, like probably some pizza or something at one of the restaurants, and I ate there. And then after I finished, I was like, oh man, I guess I gotta go again. To be fair, I think it was also pretty full. A lot of the other people were like in these indoor places, probably because it was cold. So I left, and so I cycled between these different places, the indoor rides, the restaurants, the stores, and eventually, when wandering around some of these stores, I'm like, I'm kind of hungry because the pizza wasn't really enough. I don't really want to spend any more of the money, because I'm like, oh man, like this money's not mine. I already used so much of it. Whatever the reason, in these stores, I'm looking at things and I'm getting a longing, and for some of these items, some of these snacks, some of these whatever items, and an urge comes over me to just take them. I figure, hey, what's the big deal? If I just take some of these, like, what's wrong with that? I have no idea how to rationalize my logic of being unable to stay in an establishment just doing nothing versus going to one of their stores and like stealing some of their snacks. I don't really know how to reconcile my ideas here, but regardless, I decide to shoplift. I decide to grab some of their candies, some of their snacks, whatever. I grab one, slip it into my pocket, and leave. And I do this at one store, and I don't get caught. And I'm emboldened by this. I'm like, oh, I can do this. And So I go wander around a little more, and but I go to another store because I I now know, oh man, it's kind of easy to just do. If I just stare at the thing and then just grab it, or if I just go around and just grab it like subtly and don't be too don't be too obvious about it or whatever, I can just get a free thing, which was big for me because I didn't want to spend any more money. And so I go around, I go to a second store, and I shoplift again. I grab some more candy, whatever, and I, yeah, I get away with it. And it also, I think that it wasn't even necessarily because I was hungry or whatever. I think because of how the combination of factors of being lonely, of being cold, of being miserable, I decided, hey, maybe I will do something to like take it back to get something back out of this experience, out of my misery, whatever. Maybe I will inflict some misery upon them. And so I enjoyed this feeling because after I stole these things, I didn't go out and eat the snacks. I just went on to another store and looked to steal something else. And after the second one, I wander around a little more, go to a different store, and I grab another thing. Now, my biggest op in this situation, in my mind, was security cameras. And I would look around and be like, oh, maybe there's a security camera there, a security camera there. And like, it's not really a big deal if I just like grab it over here, right? And I'm like out of security camera view, or like, it's kind of hard for it to see, whatever. And so I go to the third one and I grab another thing and I walk out, put it in my pocket, walk out. And this time, like a big guy stops me after I leave. He says hey, and I turn around and he stops me and says, what are you doing with that? I'm like, with what? But I'm like terrified. My heart is pumping. And he says, I saw you put something in your pocket. And I was like, oh, what? Like I play dumb. And he says, no, man, I saw you put something in your pocket. He's like very, very insistent. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I give it up because I had not planned on getting caught. And so I give it up. And what happens is I'm like, oh yeah, I like reverse my pockets. I show him that, yeah, I have some stolen goods. And he's like, okay, you're coming with me. And I don't really know. Because this guy was not in a security outfit. I'm pretty sure it's just like a guy. They have these guys in stores, I'm pretty sure, where it's a guy who's just dressed in normal clothes, who's just there to stop people from shoplifting and stealing. But he's like, come with me. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like shocked. I'm cold. I'm numb. I'm stupid. I've made a mistake. And so I comply. I go along and he takes me to an office. And one of the first thoughts I remember thinking was, oh man, at least it's warm in here. But after he brings me to the office, he gets he tries to like get information. He's like, hey, what's your name? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, are you with anyone? I said, I'm with like a school group. Felt terrible, by the way, being in a school group and getting caught stealing. And he's like, okay, what are your parents' information, whatever. And I'm like panicking. I only remember my mom's number at this point. I'm pretty sure. I just don't remember what my dad's number is. And he asked me, hey, like, do you know what your parents' contact info is? Like, what are your parents' names? What is their contact info? And in my brain, I don't think, oh man, I could lie here and say I don't remember the contact info or whatever. In my mind, I guess I'm thinking, oh well, they must know at some point that I will have like a mom or a dad. They'll know I have a parent or a guardian, and so lying is kind of futile in that realm. And I know my mom's phone number, so I guess, and I also probably need someone to resolve the situation. So I guess I'll try and stall out the situation as much as possible. So he asked me, hey, what's your mom's contact info? I'm like, or like, what's your parents' contact info? I say, oh, I don't really know. One of my parents' contact info. And then he says, oh, okay, what about the other parent? And I'm like, oh, I know it, but she only speaks Chinese. And which is like a pretty blatant lie. But obviously he doesn't know. And so he's like, oh, okay, well, can you still give me her number? And I'm like, okay. And then also, to stall for time, he had asked what her name was, and I said it was her Chinese name. I didn't give her English name, because I thought for some reason that would make him be like, oh no, man, I don't need to call them, whatever. And so he calls her, and she picks up. He's like, oh, it's your son, blah blah blah. Do you know where he is? Do you know what he's done? Like, come here and pick him up. And then I'm just there waiting, because they've told my parents to come pick me up. I'm pretty sure it's either my parents had to call the school and tell them that I would be picked up or whatever, because or I'd missed the bus already for whatever reason. The bus was not looking for me, but I was just waiting. I was just waiting with knots of fear and nervousness and regret just sitting in my stomach, and just thoughts buzzing around about how much trouble I would be in, and that my life was over. I was, in my mind, I was just convinced that it was over. I'd messed up forever and ever, and the consequences would be extremely dire. And so I'm waiting. I wait probably for 20, 30, 40 minutes. The guy who brought me in, he leaves eventually. I think about sneaking out, whatever, but I decide against it, not only because that would just get me in more trouble, but because my parents have already been called, like they're coming for me, so what would really be the point? And so I wait, and I wait, and I wait, with just fear and regret continuously building. Eventually, my dad shows up, and he's like a little terse. He probably apologizes to the guy or whatever, and he just takes me and we go. Walk out of the park, back to the car. It's completely dark, and we leave. And on this drive back, it's a long drive. I'm sitting in the back seat, and for most of it, he's quiet. At first, when we get in the car, he asks me, "So, you were by yourself? I thought you were with a friend." And I had to tell him that the friend had actually canceled and that I had lied about him going, and I went alone. And it was quiet for a while after that. And about 20 or so minutes later, probably, we're getting close to home at this point, my dad says that he's extremely disappointed, that he wouldn't figure that his son, of all things, would be a thief. And this is like a one-off instance, but at least to him. And I had stolen like maybe $10 worth of candy. But when he said that, I felt deflated. All of the pressure and the tension that had been building up from when I got caught, about how I'd messed up big time, how my life was over, how I was probably the worst person ever because of the compounded lies and mistakes that I had made. I felt miserable. I had betrayed my dad's trust in sending me to this thing. I had literally committed a crime. And my fear that I had made a massive terminal mistake was confirmed by my dad's condemnation of me. He didn't, when he said that he couldn't imagine his son would be a thief, he said it in a way that condemned me as a person to my very being to being just like a criminal. And it felt pretty bad. I remember saying that I didn't cry or say anything after that. I kind of just sat there and I just accepted it. In my brain then, I probably agreed with him. I mean, I was like pathetic. I was a liar. I did do the bad things. And so my dad was right. And I go home, and whether or not my dad actually felt this way, it felt like he just was disgusted by me. And so I go up to my room, and then I cry by myself very quietly about what I've done.